You are live on the stage. Hi, this is Kalol here. You are broadcasting. You are live on the stage. You're ready to go.
Well, very good. Thank you, and good morning. Happy to join, and special thanks again to the team at the Cyber Futures Foundation for the opportunity to come and speak with you today, and more importantly, for a lot of the detailed planning that has gone in to building out the Cyber Talent Week. So it's a great privilege for me to be here. My name is Guy Walsh. I'm the Executive Director of the National Security Collaboration Center at the University of Texas here in San Antonio, Texas. And what I want to do is take a few minutes to talk about the idea of, and as you can see on the screen there, the idea of creating those pipelines and using our peripheral vision to create the digital and the cyber workforce of tomorrow. Special thanks and welcome to our folks back at George Mason University. We've had the privilege of working with several of the organizations and research centers at George Mason over the past several years. And so the fact, it's no surprise, I guess, that George Mason is hosting today's event back there for some of the live aspects of what we're doing during the week. And we've had the opportunity to work with Dr. Lance Sherry and the CINA team out there, Dr. Bob Elder. And in fact, this last week, I had the privilege of being back in Washington, D.C. and working with the Rapid Prototyping Research Center and the team back there. And so our relationship with George Mason University has been tremendous over the years, and working together, and like to be able to continue with that relationship and working between universities. We had planned actually to run this as a panel this morning. And unfortunately, during my time back in DC this past week, working with Joint All-Domain C2 environment and NDIA, and working with George Mason, is the fact that despite having both vaccines and 2 boosters, I was still able to come up with COVID. So many of my panel members decided it would be much better if I were just to do this solo this morning. But I do see that if you look at the schedule throughout your day today, you will have the opportunity to meet with many other folks from our ecosystem here in San Antonio. I know that Jim Pershbach and Will Garrett and Marcel, a team from Port San Antonio, will be joining you a bit later to talk about the many things that are happening within the broader industry side of the house and the ecosystem later today. I know that one of the persons that I was supposed to be here with this morning, Mr. Joe Sanchez from the Cyber Texas Foundation, will be setting up to follow shortly after myself in terms of talking about what is happening here across many of the universities, but also with our K through 12, and he's going to focus on that a little bit more today. So I won't be the last one here today talking about the Cyber Texas and the South Central region of Texas and what we're trying to bring to bear to really become a next center and hub for cyber. And today, given again my role at the university with UTSA, but within the broader university and education scope, I'm really going to focus on that education and workforce development piece for today. So with that, again, a little bit of background for those not familiar. Before coming here about 3 years ago, this was my office space. So for about 30 years, and you can see from early days in flying F4s to about 25 years in the A-10 and then numerous aircraft. Most of my background was an operational background. It was operations, and it was all about planning. And I use this as an analogy because as you look in the lower left there, part of our key to success when you're involved in aircraft operations is the idea of using your peripheral vision. And let's just take when you're driving your car down the highway, most of your time is spent looking straight ahead, right? We call that the 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. It is the obviously place that you need to be looking to make things happen. But whether you're driving your car, or maybe even more particularly when you're flying an aircraft, you really have to expand your head and your vision to look in other areas if you're going to have mission success. And we used to use the term putting your head on a swivel. It was the idea of, and most of you, if you've watched the Top Gun movies, are familiar with a term like check six. It really means don't just keep looking straight ahead and looking at where you want to be, but expand your vision out to be able to look all around you, to look for those opportunities that are out there. And so what I want to do today is use that concept of using peripheral vision and scanning the horizon and doing something other than the standard of looking straight forward and going to the same solutions and looking at what we're doing all the time. So that's why I bring up a little bit of my background in terms of what I was doing before coming here to UTSA. So let's talk about that 10-2 because it is important. You have to understand that if we look at, and I'm going to pick on the Department of Defense in this case, given my background with them. If you look at where they go to develop their research and to conduct research on where we need to be and what we're doing in the cyber realm, in the digital realm, in not just cybersecurity, but in all the aspects of the new digital world we have, their work has been focused and concentrated in what we call FFRDCs and UARC. The first one is that federally funded research and development centers, and that's on your bottom left of the screen right there. So that is the area of our national labs. And believe me, the national labs are a national treasure. They are doing some of the most amazing research in that, falling mostly under the Department of Energy led, but supporting the Department of Defense and through those areas. And they have very core research areas and core services that they provide to doing that. And we at UTSA and many of you out there have the opportunity to work with many of these national labs. And so I'll just highlight here at San Antonio, we have a great team from the Sandia National Labs that work a lot in the cyber physical and the cyber security and other areas that we are doing a lot of research with. We're also closely tied with Idaho National Labs, who are really looking at some of our critical infrastructure, particularly in the energy sector and the energy grid there. Our work with Oak Ridge National Labs and our work with Pacific Northwest National Labs continues to grow, especially in an area I'm going to talk to you about in a while, which is about manufacturing, and one of the big areas that we're working with on those national labs to do those type pieces there. And then you have over in the top part what we call our UARCs, our University Affiliated Research Centers, and those are a handful, about a dozen or so, of research centers that are particularly doing some fantastic focused research that is tailored to support one of those organizations you see up there, either the services, in this case, Army, Navy, or in some other cases, NSA or the broader DoD or US Stratcom. And so again, many of these are tremendous partners in terms of what they'll do there. And then you'll see over on the right-hand side there, we also have very, DoD laboratories and centers. And these are actually the government employees that are doing tailored research. In many cases, they're looking at doing predominantly classified research that we do there. And so you will find that in most cases, to work in any of those three centers will usually drive requirements working in high national security to be able to have researchers that have clearances, despite the fact that much of the research they do and much of what they leverage from the industry world is really unclassified research at its basic and foundational levels. I'll point to the third piece down there. I had the opportunity. So for my last 9 years as a civilian with the Department of Defense, I was privileged to work at US Cyber Command to help stand up that organization to do that. And one of the roles I had was to be working down at the Pentagon with, at that time, the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Mr. Bob Work, on a project called Third Offset. And it was looking at an offset strategy for regaining our competitive edge in this case with the Department of Defense. And one of the biggest things that Secretary Work really pushed on is really opening up that aperture again, and not just looking at 10-2, but looking at how we expand and leverage all of the great work that's going on not within these centers, but externally centers, and now bring some of that to bear. And that became what was known as the human machine combat teaming effort and the third offset strategy that we did there. What I will tell you is if you take all of those pieces there and then jump up to the top and you look at what that is focused on, it is really focused on doing world-class research. But I will also tell you that it is not about developing the education to build those pipelines, to fill the jobs, to continue to do that research and move from foundational research to applied and being able to do the prototypes that George Mason and other universities are doing right there. And so that's where we as a nation and we as North America have failed to be able to do that. We failed to look at, are we creating those pipelines and are we creating the workforce? And the results are showing that we're not right now. And so that's why, again, what I want to do is spend a little bit of time now in terms of looking, okay, how do we create that pipeline? How do we create that education? Because if you sit and watch and listen to the research, one of the second slide that is presented by these research centers, by both our FFRDCs and by the UARCs and our university affiliated research centers, their job and their responsibility and their mission is not to do workforce development. That is not what they're doing. They're really good at research, but we need to find the solutions outside of those organizations if we're going to be able to do that last thing, is in terms of building the education systems and creating that workforce development opportunities. And so here's where we are with that. How do you create that digital workforce pipeline? And it doesn't start at a university level, right? It really starts on what are we doing at our K through 12 levels? How are we encouraging from the kindergarten level? How are we first engaging, and who are those leading folks that are opening that aperture so that, again, when I was growing up, the decision in terms of what I wanted to be is by what I saw out there in the public, right? So I saw the doctors, I saw the lawyers, I saw the leaders of my community, the mayors, I saw my first responders and the firemen. And that's typically what encourages you when you're at the younger ages there in that K through 12 to say, that's what I want to be, because they see what those folks do within their community every day. And unfortunately, we don't have that visibility, that same visibility into this workforce, into that digital workforce, right? And so that is key in terms of we need to start tackling this earlier at that K through 12 to really start increasing and expanding that pipeline. The second one is within as they get into that college area and where I'm working now. In terms of students that are entering that field, you've got those that are entering into a cyber and cybersecurity area. But what we're finding now is that being able to bring cyber and cybersecurity training into other areas where people are interested. I coming out of an area of being aerospace and others in mechanical engineering and others in medical. The importance of cybersecurity in each of those areas. So it's really on becoming a lot more transdisciplinary and cross-disciplinary in our approach in our college. And UTSA has taken that. So when you come here to this university, regardless if you're entering into a program in kinesiology, if you're entering in a program in any of the programs, mechanical engineering, if you're entering into some of the medical career fields, you are now required to be having some level of a cybersecurity training when we're doing that. And then the final piece is really about continuing education, because it doesn't start with colleges. In fact, there are many folks now within the broader U.S. and North America that are looking at saying, hey, I've been doing something in engineering for 20 years, but I want to change and do something different. So taking folks that have these tremendous skills in manufacturing and in business and in finance, and now upskilling and reskilling them to understand the challenges of that digital economy, but now leveraging those exact same skill sets that they built in their business and finance and their engineering degrees is absolutely critical in terms of that. So it runs across this gamut in terms of increasing the size of these pipelines in terms of how we go about moving forward to create that piece there. So what I want to do is maybe share a little bit. Who are those folks who are looking beyond the 10 to 12? Who are the folks that are opening the aperture of how we build that education, how we build that workforce that is that we currently lack out there? So some of the folks that were going to be on the panel this morning that are actually together right now, and I'm going to start up at the top with that group there, the Cyber Threat Defender team in the Cyber Threat Defender card game. Dr. Greg White runs our Center for Infrastructure Assurance and Security. And one of the things that Greg thought as a very visionary person is, hey, if we're going to get that kindergarten, the second grader, the fifth grader, part of it is we have to make this fun. And so Greg and his team out of CIS created what is known as the Cyber Threat Defender card game. And there's about 3 different versions of this card game. One of them is for that kindergarten, first through third grade. The number one thing isn't to make these folks experts in cyber, but it's meant to expose them to some of the tools and what a computer is and what a server is and what a firewall is. But the purpose of the card game was really to have fun. And so Greg and his team have developed that card game. They've sent it out. I think it's done in about 5 or 6 languages now, has gone international, but it's really about just getting that first inklings to say, hey, this would be fun to do when we do that. I will also tell you that this week, one of the other projects that Dr. Greg White has is he runs a lot of the national competitions. And so if you're out there and working as a professor or working in the colleges, you're probably already familiar with the National Cyber Defense competition, NCCDC. And the finals for that, in fact, will kick off this Thursday here in San Antonio in terms of that. So it's a nationally held competition, similar to when I'll say those capture the flag competitions that has continued to grow over the years. And Greg and his team out of CIS run that program. The other part is really about creating a culture of cybersecurity. And so if you jump down to the bottom right of the screen right now, Greg and his team working with MITRE Corporation, working with some of the folks out at the NPS out at the Naval Postgraduate School. But they have created something to try to look at how do we bring cybersecurity into our culture. Many of you remember that back in the 80s, we had McGruff talking about taking a bite out of crime. And so whether you were a kindergartner or whether you were in your 90s, when you saw McGruff, you were able to say, okay, here's what we have to do to take a bite out of crime, something along that line. Earlier than that, for those of us old enough to remember, we had Smokey the Bear, right? He was the one that created that culture about only you can prevent forest fires. Well, that same challenge that we had, forest fires and with crime, is really not being tackled in that. And so Greg and his team came up with that bottom right-hand picture. And as you can imagine, that group right there is called the Cyber family. And so it's really all about being able to create that culture so that we can start getting folks and broadening that aperture so people become interested in what they're doing. On the far left-hand corner, so in fact, your next speaker will be coming live from I think it's the Institute of Cybersecurity Innovation over at our Northeast ISD with Josh Peck. So Joe Sanchez is, I'm not going to steal his thunder there, but the idea that you have a Northeast ISD that is bringing people to a 40,000 foot square old Walmart that has become a cybersecurity hub and center for all of the students at ISD is absolutely tremendous. I'm going to stop because, again, I'm going to probably cut into some of Joe's words this afternoon. Over there on the visit is that the top center picture, Steve Morrow. So Steve is from back there in Baltimore at Loyola Blakefield. And this year he was the coach of the year for the Cyber Patriot program, the high school program, the Centers of Excellence. But Steve has been one of those visionary folks to look at establishing that program that started with maybe a dozen kids at Loyola Blakefield in Baltimore, and grew to more than 160 different kids, bigger than the football team, of people that wanted to become part of that organization and compete. And for 8 continuous years, his teams have won the states in terms of the Cyber Patriot program, and have done that. And then the one on the bottom left there, Dr. Tarika Brown, she has developed a program of Girls Who Code. And so some of those is really to start saying, hey, we've done really well at encouraging the male population at young ages, but we're doing not so well in being able to create a female population across the board in terms of getting them interested. And so her program, Girls Who Code, I had the opportunity last August to join Tarika at the Cybersecurity Summit at the White House to be and talk about the impact that that program is having on getting people engaged earlier and more often and staying engaged in the cyber community. And then similar, the code.com up there with the fishes driving around there. Again, one of those things, 1 hour of code. So these are the folks who are really looking beyond that 10 to 2. Where do we typically go to? We go to our major colleges that are looking at, your Stanfords and your MITs and your other locations to look at. We need to look at a broader population. We need to look at the female population. And what are we doing to encourage them to become part of the solution and part of that workforce for tomorrow? Here's one of my favorite examples. I had the opportunity, and many of you on the East Coast will recognize, that's the city of New York right there. I think we took that picture looking from the rooftop of Columbia University. But the 5G project in New York City, known as Cosmos, is really looking at setting up a test bed for urban environments. And so Rutgers University and NYU and Columbia University have put that together. But importantly, in this case, what you're looking at of going from, and I can't remember the street, it's about 125th Street up to New York City University, I think about 145th Street. But they have established that test bed in what most of us know as West Harlem. And so that is the location of the test bed, not necessarily to bring 5G technology to that area, but really to expose the K through 12 and be able to let them know is, hey, this is a capability we can have. And so they've been engaging with the faculty and the students throughout the school districts there in New York City and getting them interested in that. And so that's something that we're trying to model or follow after and mirror of the work that's been done by Columbia University and NYU and Rutgers, and do that here in San Antonio. So looking to cross where we actually still have the digital divide, where they don't have the internet and don't have that, and working with our industry partners to bring that to the future there. So very fortunately, this is our new center. So this is the new National Security Collaboration Center at our School of Data Science. That's the San Pedro Creek right on the right-hand side there of that. This facility is what I explained is probably one of the most complex education facilities on the planet. And we were very fortunate to get this piece of property in the heart of downtown. We're next door to Market Square. If you look out the front door, you're looking into the mayor's office and across the street from the federal courthouse. We're across the street from the Department of Homeland Security's and the Southwest Texas Fusion Center, San Antonio Police Department. And that river right there, the San Pedro Creek, is actually where the city of San Antonio was founded 330 years ago. So a great piece of property. And if I do my job right in 2025, when you come here to San Antonio and you go to TripAdvisor, you go to Yelp, the number one place to visit will obviously still be the Alamo, right? But this needs to be the number 2 place to visit. Back to what I said is we have to start getting K through Gray walking in those front doors, because the bottom floor of this is the heart of San Antonio and the heart of cybersecurity. And it includes our Security Operations Center that you'll be able to look into and understand. Here is what a Security Operations Center is all about. Here's what they do, and here's why it's important. And then throughout this, our School of Data Science will have, in this case, mostly our graduate and PhD level teams that will be working to look at both applied and foundational research against the cybersecurity and the idea of data and data science in terms of making that forward. So we'll be proudly opening this new facility here in the fall. Let's try the next slide here. So what's magic about the facility isn't just the location that I talked about, but it's really about this ecosystem that doesn't exist in any other university or anywhere else that we have. And that is, if you look at the folks that, if you look at the symbols on the left-hand side, those are our corporate partners that are sitting inside of the facility out there and engaging with us on a regular basis. And you can see that they range from the very large companies, the Raytheons, the Lockheed Martins, the Cisco, Microsoft, and Dell, to some more partners that are really heavy into the cybersecurity and supporting the broader ecosystem here in San Antonio. And they're part of this ecosystem because they're very interested in understanding what the government's requirements are. What are those things that the federal government and our state governments need to be able to make our systems, our critical infrastructure, more resilient and more secure? And then on the opposite side, on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see those are all the federal partners that are part of the NSCC and SDS. And they range from our Army Research Lab teams, to our Department of Energy teams that I talked about earlier, to a large portion of the Air Force, excuse me, 16th Air Force, which really is the Air Force Cyber organization, right? Not only cyber, but all of the intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance headquarters. Here in San Antonio, we're also home to Army North. So the Homeland Defense Mission, that team that has for the past 2 years, been providing all of those resources to be able to support the COVID response, the logistics, the planning for bringing doctors to the cities from our reserve component, from our National Guard components. So a tremendous group, and they're all there again because they want to understand what universities are bringing to the fight. What is the research that's happening out there with our many university partners? And again, you only have a smattering of them down at the bottom in terms of that. But it's really about creating that ecosystem to be able to create that workforce environment that's there. So with that, let me stop because I know I've gone through a lot of slides there. But what I really want to do is just take this time to open it up for any type of questions. And we look forward to our partnerships. We have many centers and institutes that we work with from our different universities. I mentioned George Mason. I know Waterloo is coming up a little bit in a while. And one of our centers in our cybersecurity center here is run by Dr. Elias Buharb, who is a graduate of Waterloo and comes to us as a dual citizen with Canada. So building those relationships that we've had with our Canadian partners across the border is absolutely huge. And so with that, again, Val, my thanks to you and the team for the opportunity to share with you today. I was able to at least get my voice to work through most of it here. But I look forward to any questions, and as well as the future partnerships with CFF and your team.
Thank you for braving braving it through and continuing the mission and contributing to it. So we are very thankful. Thanks to your team too that does all the great work. We can't wait to be in San Antonio. As you know, our other initiative around National Cyber Help Desk is coming to San Antonio. We're very proud of it and proud of the partnership that we have with all the stakeholders there. UTSA and the port and the individual components within UTSA which are coming together, and we'll make it happen. And all that you laid out today in terms of the pipeline, building the pipeline, blocking the leakages, and actually building it, expanding it. Expanding the peripheral vision, which I believe is really key. I mean, I think a lot of folks are really looking at the same or similar areas to tap into, and that doesn't lend ourselves to growth in cyber capacity. Not let alone cyber capacity, but for any other means, it's probably going to meet the same end. We are going to all steal from each other, not really build new talent pipelines. So thank you for this contribution. I believe what we would take away from here is expand the field of vision, expand the alternative ways to create cyber pipeline, and add to that pipeline, bring in more collaboration and collaborative partners all the way as far as you can go. I think in terms of K through 12, all the engagements through to the undergrad and graduate levels, because I mean, next 10 years is not going to be built with just what we are doing today. It's going to, next 10 years of pipeline development needs for us to go as far as deep down into early childhood education and increase this. And I believe there is another side effect which is very positive coming out of this cyber discussions, is that those young kids who spend a lot of time in the cyberspace and digital, valleys, I think they will become more informed and educated around cyber issues. And the time they spend, I see my 10-year-old doing the same thing. I believe they are well served, and it's not only a great career counseling and opportunity, but also making sure that their ways of lives are protected, and they are taken care of while they spend the time there. So very well.
So let me add one thing. I see that I know the slide deck that I forwarded at the last minute was not the one I had worked on a little bit last night. And so let me cover one other quick area that I did fail, because I wanted to jump into that reskilling portion of the pipeline that I talked about. One of the things that where we recognize this failure now as a nation, and just one example is the idea that years ago we decided to offshore all of the manufacturing, whether that be our microprocessors, but basically everything. And maybe at that time was the right decision, but realizing of what we saw during the pandemic and realizing that bringing manufacturing back to North America needs to be a key portion of the solution, whether that be the solution to new jobs and new creation. And part of that is really creating this new manufacturing floor that is both has cybersecurity, has resilience in its supply chain and everything else. And so we've been very fortunate at UTSA to be selected by the Department of Energy to become their center of excellence for manufacturing. And that center is called CyManI, the Cyber Manufacturing Innovation Institute. And they're going into their second year now, led by Dr. Howard Grimes. And I will tell you that this is going to be, because it's not only about cybersecurity, it is about onshoring manufacturing back to North America. And this is an important piece.
No, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's something very personal to me. It's can imagine I'm a double E major, and I did my graduate work on VLSI design, electronic design automation. That was my background, and I was so frustrated that all the chips I would design, I can manufacture it. It would probably take another 3 years to get my graduation finished if I had to wait for that. And that is, I think, that probably is it kept me out of actually doing what I wanted to do. But I believe it's also a national security issue, not being able to manufacture here, and the designs, and it's an IP issue definitely for the private sector industry, but more so with all that is digital. I think it's important to have that done where it's designed. So I love the logo, the way I think Apple probably puts it, like, design in California, manufacture wherever it is, right? But I think it's about time that we actually build something here, and I think the opportunities are endless, and we cannot just keep cyber talent in cyber, because a lot of this is needing, especially in the industrial control systems, they need to be manufactured, with precise, security specifications, and everything that goes underneath into the silicon. And the best place to do is here. And I'm glad, and congratulations to UTSA for leading the charge on this one. We can't wait to see the CyManI Center completely in action. I believe they're already well underway, and what it would contribute to from the industry standpoint, making sure that it becomes the catalyst for all the expansion of manufacturing, especially in the electronic and electronic space. So, excellent point. Thank you for bringing it up. Well, anything else that you think this audience should know, especially in the little bit of strategic direction that we could? I think a lot of this is kind of molding of what we do now versus what we do later. But in terms of including in the national kind of a considerations for a cybersecurity national strategy, anything else that you want to mention?
Yeah, so you had just mentioned a little bit about control systems. And so that's something I think we have to look forward to, where we realized, whether it be after the Colonial Pipeline incident and others, that focus on that. So I've been very fortunate to sit on the congressionally mandated, it's called the Securing the Energy Infrastructure Task Force. And so sometime, I believe this April, you will see that either the Department of Energy or the White House will release what is called the National Strategy for Cyber-Informed Engineering. And it's really about trying to bring those two groups together, right? So you have what I'll call your cybersecurity experts and people that work in that and really understand networks and IT and how to tackle things such as malware and different type of intrusions, those type of things. And then you have this other part that you brought up, the folks who build control systems and OT devices. That again, some of the challenges are now at the sensor level, at the 0 and 1 level, that are not being attacked by necessarily a malware, but just the design features of how it operates, and adversaries are taking advantage of that. And so I think that will be a great opportunity for more research, more approaches to cybersecurity with those control systems and sensors. And I know that we're working with a lot of our partners here in San Antonio. We're fortunate to be working with CPS Energy, which provides most of the gas and electric, as well as the San Antonio water system. We're looking at how we secure the water. So really focused on those key critical infrastructure areas that we work with. And then particularly here also, in the case of 5G, a lot of 5G technology, the Department of Defense has put the 5G core security testing and experimentation here at Joint Base San Antonio. So a lot of great things that are hubbing here, but we also understand that to be successful, we need to reach out to all the folks in the audience today, to many of the other universities like Waterloo, like George Mason University, and all of the industry folks that are out there today, to be able to approach those. So that's a couple of things that are coming up on the horizon here as we watch the federal government, the White House and DOE release that cyber-informed engineering strategy in the next few months.
That is fantastic to hear that, and thanks for the heads up. I think it will serve us well to utilize that in the best way we can, but also be prepared to support the candidates and the students who would be going through this process of learning as well as doing, right? I think, one thing that I really like about the UTSA and the ecosystem around UTSA is a lot of hands-on experience. I think that is what industry values most. I think there is no replacement for a hands-on experience. What I would look forward to is probably, since we talk about industrial control system, probably labs that actually give that in an extensive way. I was one of the students who went down to the robotics, I think, conferences that used to happen in UTSA. I'm talking about 15, 20 years back when I was in school. And UTSA was the hub for it. I would love to see something like that done for industrial control systems to happen.
And I know that Port San Antonio will be on later. We are building the state of the University of Texas, and Dr. Howard Grimes and Ken Fowler and their team are building a laboratory for manufacturing down with Ken. So if he doesn't bring it up, and if Will Garrett and Marcel don't bring that up, please ask him about that. The new Simani manufacturing floor that they're building down there. So again, it'll be a great discussion. And we thank our partnership that we have with the folks down at Port San Antonio for making that happen as well.
Absolutely. No, it's all about partnership and collaboration. That's how we can get things done together. We all being a certain piece, and all of us piece together and address that puzzle. So thank you again. I know you worked hard to get through this session, but it sounded fantastic. Of course, the ideas were stellar, and we're looking forward to working with you and continuing the journey together. So thank you, Guy, and looking forward to the next event. Okay.
Thanks, Val, and I appreciate everybody today. So
thank you all. Cheers. Bye.